EGROW Friday webinar series. I'm very happy to share with you. We have done more than 300 webinars. We have had 6 Nobel laureates come and speak to us. We started with the objective of looking at contemporary issues, domestic and global. Very happy to share that we have been successful in bringing a blend of foreign scholars, Indian scholars working abroad, Indian scholars working in India, public policy experts on issues which are really contemporary, burning, and important, both domestic and global. These days, we are pursuing Viksit Bharat, which means we want to be a developed nation by 2047. By the standards of per capita income, it means we will have to climb the ladder from the current 2,880 per capita income in USD to 17,000 per capita USD. Herculean task, but not impossible. We will have to grow in the range of 8.5 to 9.5% in the next 22 odd years, and we can do it. Has any country done it in the past? Is it doable? Those are the type of questions I generally get asked. Looking at research, 2 major countries have achieved this in a great way. One of it is China, of course, starting from reforms in 78, galloping on from 1980 to 2012. They averaged 9.9%. Highest ever growth rate recorded for a stretch of about 30 odd years. And China is where it is. The per capita income today is in the range of around 15,000 USD, which is amazing. From the status of 1978, where China and India were together, seeping in poverty, today China is galloping and challenging the best of the best in the world. The other country which did it is Korea. Korea did a miracle. From 1962 to 1989, how did Korea achieve this miracle of growth above 8%? And that's massive growth. And today, Korea is a developed country. How did this all happen? This is important for a country like ours to learn. Many people in our country say, and rightly so, that we are growing above 6.5%, which is good. And we are the fastest growing large economy in the world, which obviously is the truth. But then our objective, given that we have a young demographic population, given that the young demographic dividend benefit that we have is only available for 20 odd years, then the aged population picks up and everybody knows that about 20% of India will be above 60 years. Once above 60 years, productivity is obviously not as high as you are 40 years in the working age population. Japan today, 40% of the population is above 60 years. Japan really cannot stage a bounce back. So given that we have such a short window, we thought it will be best to talk to the Koreans, somebody who has lived through it, has experience, to tell us what is that Korea did that they grew at that percentage. And please remember, 62 to 89, the world was not fair. The world had its own hiccups. The oil price shocks took place at that time, both in early 70s and late 70s. So there were massive challenges that, and then the dollar decoupled from gold. Total trouble in the global financial market. Korea survived all that and galloped to a growth rate of 8% for such a long time. So, something to learn from Korea. So, today we have invited a panel, and I think that's the best panel we could have asked for. Professor Chung Yong Han from Korea, Ambassador Ranjan Tayal, who has been our ambassador there, and scholar Jitendra Uttam from JNU. Let me briefly introduce the panel to you. First, to start with, the main speaker, Professor Chung Yong Han, is currently Distinguished Professor at the Graduate School of International Studies, Choong University, Seoul. He is also co-chair of the Korea-India Strategic Dialogue organized by the Seoul International Forum. As I understand, he has been working in India on India-Korea relationship for a very long time. He has been a visiting professor to Economic Research Institute, Kyoto University, Japan. His honors include the Economist of the Year award from the Mail Business Daily newspaper in Korea, the Okita Policy Research Award by the National Institute for Research Advancement in Japan, and Free Economy Publication Award by the Federation of Korean Industries. Well recognized and worked a lot on Korea and Indo-Korea relationship. To chair the session, we have Ambassador Tayal. He is from the Indian Foreign Service, 76 batch. He has served in Indian missions in Sofia, Warsaw, Geneva, Moscow. He has been ambassador to Uzbekistan. He has been ambassador to the Republic of Korea during 2008 to 11. And therefore, he has vast experience on Korea. He has authored a book, India and Republic of Korea, Engaged Democracies, which was released in December 2013 by the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India then. To discuss the growth pattern that we are expecting Professor and to share with us, we have invited Professor Jitendra Uttam, the chairperson of the Center for Asian Studies School of International Studies, JNU. He was awarded a Korean government fellowship, which became the Global Korea Scholarship in 93. He completed his PhD from Korea's Seoul National University in 2002. With this, I hand over the session to Ambassador Tayal to take the proceedings further. Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charan Singh, first for organizing this session on a very important topic, very relevant to India's own public policy planning for growth, and for giving me an opportunity to be associated with it. And a word of gratitude and congratulations to you yourself, Dr. Charan Singh, for your initiative, for your dynamism, and for your commitment to continue to advise Government of India and policy makers on the economic growth of India through this very good vehicle forum, EGROW Foundation. I have not been able to attend many of your seminars, but the topics and the speakers themselves narrate a full story. Before I request our distinguished speakers and discussant to give an expert's viewpoint, I will share some of my own observations of Korea when I was there. And after that also I have been there 8-10 times. That when I was there, then the IAS groups used to come for phase 4 training before they became joint secretaries. That means 15, 16 years of service, to understand for 2 to 3 weeks to understand the way Korea took for its development. And also, National Defense College groups used to come for their examining the Korean defense system, etc. And I used to give the first address to these groups to initiate them that what to look for. And some of the observations which I made and made a comparison with India. Our first thing, the benchmark is that, of course, both countries were divided and had a colonial legacy. And if we look at the 40s and early 50s, perhaps South Korea, Republic of Korea, in per capita income, etc., was perhaps poorer than India. And today, we all know where South Korea is and where India is. And some of the differences which I could notice was that in South Korea, there was total literacy by about 1970. And in India, even now, year of the Lord 2025, we are at about 75% literacy. There was a major slippage in both public policy planning and execution. Then a great emphasis on vocational education and very skilled workforce availability in Korea, where again we were perhaps deficient. Another very important milestone or landmark or figure that Korea spends almost 3.5% of its GDP on research and development, and more than 80% of that comes from the industry. So, whatever research is done, it is immediately applied. And that's why we see all the Korean chaebols and Samsung and LG and all at the cutting edge of technology. Semiconductors, now we have woken up, and they are at masters of it for the last 2 decades. We are at 0.7% of GDP on R&D, and that also mostly by the government with not much tangible result. Then, if there is an order for export or delivery of any equipment, very, very timely delivery. I recall when I was there, then Shipping Corporation of India had signed some about orders for 5 container ships from 2, 3 different shipbuilders of Korea. And the then shipping minister, Mr. T.R. Balu, had come there. And after signing, at one point, we had visited one shipyard, and they said that the ship normally takes about 10 months to build, so it will be ready on 10th of October next year. So you please come on 15th of October and launch it. And the ship was ready 1 week before 10th of October of next year. Now, in India, we cannot think of that kind of timelines and that kind of delivery and that surety. Then, of course, the another noticeable thing for me was the passion um, of whatever hobby or work my Korean friends were doing. There were a lot of passion in it. Even if they went to the golf course for 3, 4, 5 hours, they were hitting balls at the driving range to improve. So no half-hearted measures. And I recall the president of the Korea University at that time was a friend, and he was completing his term. And I said, "What will you be doing then?" He said, "Yeah, that he'll go to US because his English is a little weak, and he wants to become perfect in learning English." Now, this is coming from a president of a Korean university. And then, of course, all of us know our Urinara spirit, the my country first, and do everything for the country. Their discipline is well known. The punctuality at the workforce, work ethic is very well known, and the even the research scholars. I met some yesterday, and they said that they come to the when they were in Korea, they came to the research lab at before 9 and left after 9 p.m. So these are some of the things which have helped in bringing Korea to where it is, a developed country, per capita income maybe $35,000, and at the cutting edge of technology. To tell us about this journey of transformation of South Korea from, say, 1962 to 1989, from a developing country and then galloping ahead to become a developed economy, we have Professor Choong on. He has been associated with the India-Korea dialogue for more than 2 decades, and this concept of SEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, emerged from one of the dialogues co-chaired by Professor An. So, Professor An, the floor is yours. You may like to speak to 30-35 minutes. Over to you, Professor An.
And this time, shall I start?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, the Honorable Chairman Singh, thank you very much for inviting me at this very prestigious webinar at the EGROW, and I'm so happy to share my thought on the Korea's high growth regime over the 1962 through 1989. And I'm also so delighted to see my old friend, Ambassador Tayal. And perhaps you know more than I do on the Korea's development process, since you were in Korea and visiting many industrial complexes. Well, I'm also very happy to report you that today we completed the 24th Korea-India Strategic Dialogue. Can you see here this? So the Madam Chairperson, the Ananta Aspen Center, Indrani the Baguchi, brought Indian delegation to here, and I was privileged to chair a session on the strategic collaboration of defense industry between India and South Korea. In fact, I just published a research report, how we can promote a defense industry collaboration between Korea and India, co-authored with Jagannath Panda, with whom we just published a book on the India-Korea connectivity in the Indo-Pacific, unilateralism to multilateralism. Well, I prepared some slides, and I'll go over page 1. And I think the Dr. Singh, specifically designated the period over 1962 through 1989. I would call it a golden era of Korea's high growth regime and dramatic transformation period. Well, the Dr. Singh already introduced me, but here I want to mention that we just published a book with Jagannath Panda on India-Korea connections in the Pacific. Well, I'm so happy to continue to work on how we can promote a truly strategic cooperation between two countries as a middle power in this fragmented, unpredictable world. Well, my talk here, briefly here summarized. In the 1960s, I want to touch on export of the labor-intensive product amid Korea's extreme poverty. And moving on 1970s, South Korean government suddenly shifted to heavy and chemical industrialization. This is a dramatic transformation. So I would like to, explain the background and what policy instrument we, demobilized. In the 1980s, I want to touch on the Korea commenced the market opening, especially on the consumer product and undergoing the liberalization. And the follow-up story is, okay, it's even more dramatic, but I want to stop over at the until 1980s. Well, here is, you can see a poverty-stricken, miserable, the scenery in the late 1980s, right after Korean War. You can see a lot of the war orphans and also people, undergoing a starvation. U.S. economic aid actually helped Korea escape from such malnutrition and starvation. Well, borrowing the Professor Raghunath Nux's terminology, between 1950s through early 1960s, Korean economy can be described as suffering from vicious circle of poverty in the post-Korean War period. Well, first of all, we had the very, very low income. As a result, low savings, and which then bring low investment. Low investment caused a low productivity. As a result, again, the low income level. So the continuing the circular of this poverty-stricken. During this period, I think that we suffered the chronic shortage of food. We even have the terminology calling the barley hills. Most of Korean farmers harvest rice in the early November, but the running out of rice by the end of the February because of the low yield. And the rice harvest was so poor. Therefore, many Korean families anxiously waiting for ripening of the barley, which coming normally around early June. So we had the critical food shortage period, March and April. That period we call it barley hill. That's a standard terminology I used to learn while attending the primary, schools. Well, our income level was just mere subsistence, and we're still very thankful to U.S. aid under the U.S. Public Law 480, providing, phones and the flour mills, so on. Now, during 1960s, you see major export items in Korea is, as you can see here, dried squid and, the wig. Korean girls used to wear very, very long hair, and we used to cut those girls, the hairs to make wigs dyed in various colors, and exported that to New York market in early 1961. The first export item to the U.S. And then the dried Pollock, okay, the standard the export items in early 1960s. And as we enter 1980s, can you see such a dramatic transformation? Look at the South Korea's export items ranging from automobiles, to iron and steel, the electronics, shipbuilding, within a matter of a quarter century. Well, the miracle economic performance is, vividly compared if you look at the major economic indicators in 1962 compared to 1989. Per capita GDP was about $87. Philippine per capita income higher than South Korean income. North Korea's per capita income is even 3 times of South Korea's per capita income in early 1962, one of the poorest countries in the world. But at the quarter century, our per capita income rose 5,450, ranking about the 30s in the whole world. Look at our export volume. In 1962, only $55 million, but jumped to the $63 billion, 60s in the world at the moment in terms of the export volume. Well, this is the scenery you can see, what a dramatic change, and high-rise apartment buildings along the Han River, various restaurants and some, public entertainment places. This is visible everywhere almost in the world, in Korea now. Let me break up the major component factors which are responsible for Korea's, development machinery. Well, in early 1960s, we adopted the outward-looking development strategy in contrast to import substitution inward-looking strategy adopted by basically most of the newly independent countries, including India and Latin America post-World War II. And Korea was one of very exceptional to adopt outward-looking, export-oriented economy. At the core of this development machinery, I think the first ingredient should be pointed out, the unlimited, borrowing the Arthur Lewis terminology, disguised unemployment. But in case of Korea, they are educated, at least having the primary education in early 1960 amid extreme poverty. And Korea was recorded one of the most, the illiteracy rate in 1960s was one of the lowest among developing countries. And the Korean government was sitting on the driver's seat in the organizing outward-looking developed the machinery. And we relied on the foreign borrowing rather than foreign direct investment at the beginning to emphasize indigenous capability of the Korean firms. And then Korea turned around, from the very beginning overseas market because of the very small size of Korea's domestic market due to the subsistence income level. The domestic market side is so shallow, or looking expanded the overseas market. So Korean government, tried to combine those 3 essential ingredients. First, providing the repayment guarantee when the Korean business borrowed money overseas in international financing agencies. And then government provided, a set of the incentives systems for exporters. Here, foreign loans, borrowings, in a sense, played ignition role to mobilize unemployed but educated labor force. And overseas market served as expansion of the Korea's labor-intensive product. So this is essential ingredient Korea's outward-looking development system. But let me point out that the Korea was very lucky. The first President Syngman Lee adopted the compulsory education, free education at the primary school level, at the Constitution. And then Syngman Lee also carried on the land reform on the basis of the cultivator-owner principles. Many of the developing countries in that period failed to carry on the land reform, as observed in Philippines and most of the Latin American countries. Partial extent, maybe that might be also true to India, but Korea carried on this basic institutional reform, which served as the pillar or foundation of Korea's modern economic growth. Well, the initiating light manufacturing export. Why we do this? The reason was very simple. Given the paucity of natural resources, we didn't have a significant natural resources. All the natural resources are, iron and this still metallic product are located in North Korea, but South Korea is basically agricultural land. But we had to import food because shortage of the food I mentioned, the barley hill, and the oil to survive the cold winter temperature, and some basic raw materials. Okay, everything must be imported. But then how we can import them? Okay, we have to earn foreign exchange. The reason was very simple. Why Korea was turned around outward looking at the very beginning, of developing countries. So it's indeed a sharp departure, from prevailed import substitution ideology. And then, we look at the unlimited labor supply. If they are mobilized, okay, they can serve a very powerful, productive ingredient matched with, some capital formation. So we borrowed the foreign money to do that. And most importantly, our export drive allowed Koreans to gain learning by doing, the practice, looking at the practices, major the international firms at the advanced economies, and the export markets also allowed us to enjoy economic scale. So this is a very important point, the learning by doing and the economies of scale, given the Korea's shallow and low-income economy. Well, I did mention that we emphasize the indigenous capability building. Okay, first, relying on foreign borrowings, we avoided foreign direct investment at the fear of maybe foreign firms may dominate Korean economy again, as we suffered during the colonial period by Japan. And the major export items are already mentioned that. Then we shift to heavy and chemical industrialization beginning in the mid-1970s, taking a latecomer's advantage. Yeah, Korea's this economic high-performing performance was very well described in the seminal publication of the World Bank's East Asian Miracle, the representative economy of East Asian Miracle, along with the Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. But Taiwan and Singapore, the Hong Kong and Singapore is basically state city economy, but Korea having basic ingredient of to claim as a normal the state having huge side land and population. So therefore, given the Korea's factor endowment, Korean performance was highlighted as a representative economy in the Middle East, in the East Asian Miracle Report. Well, here, I think this you might be very much interested in. What sort of the incentive schemes we provided for light manufacturing export? Korean government was selective incentives granted on the basis of export performance-based, market principles. When exporters demonstrate a genuine letter of credit issued by importers, Korean banks were ready to give a bank loans. It's allowed. It's automatic process and also unrestricted as long as exporters provide a letter of credit. If you look at the development history of many of the developing countries, exporters having enormous difficulty to get bank lending. But in Korean case, it was automatic process and unrestricted, bank credit. I think this is one of the crucial components of the how we explain the successful export performance. And furthermore, Korean government exempted the import tariff charge on the raw materials and the intermediate inputs imported for the export manufacturing. Okay, this seldom can be seen in other developing countries. We even invented a local letter of credit, giving the similar privilege for those domestic supply intermediate suppliers, although they don't involve final export activities. And then the Korean government conducted a somewhat regular devaluation in favor of the exporters, profit making. And then institutionally, President Park Chung-hee conducted the monthly export promotion, cabinet meeting, reviewing the export performance every month, and then attended by the ministers as well as export businessmen. And whatever export businessmen, they point out some, structural rigidities and administrative the measures, sort of anti-export type regulations. President Park Chung-hee immediately corrected, instructing responsible ministers to take the actions immediately. And well, I also mentioned that it's export-oriented, outward-looking development scheme provided here, I said that costless access of advanced practices, learning by doing at the arm's length at the overseas market. The Korean wig exporters went to New York City for the first time in 1961. For the first time, they saw a great white rise in New York City, and how the international, export items are displayed, and they saw that the Jewish people, selling a lot of the wigs at the New York market, and the Korean wig sellers offered at the extreme low price, at the bargaining purpose. 3 pieces, together about the $15, but Jewish used to sell the $15 just 1 piece. But Korean wig product, very high quality because Korean hairs are very stiff and able to resist, various dyeing process. You as consumers, you say, purchase the product, the quality is good, and what cheap bargaining. 3 pieces put together, $15. That's the first item Korea brought something from the war-stricken economy to the United States. And the first time Korean exporters to earn foreign exchange, to open up international banking account at Chase Manhattan Bank. That's happened in early 1962. Here, while undergoing the export-oriented light manufacturing, I really would like to point out that President Park Chung-hee carried on new community movement. This whole idea, Semaul movement, in a sense, the Korean, local government is working together with Indian farm community to see if this could be, transplanted in Indian rural movement. Well, in Korea, traditionally, we had the off-farm season, almost 3 months long, okay? Farmers doing nothing. And so, as a result, we also the diverging gap between rural and urban incomes. Then the President Park Chung-hee brought on the idea of, hey, look, farmers, we should be, disciplined on the 3 principles: diligence, self-help, and cooperation with the community people. And the government provided some incentives schemes such as free cement. Okay, government suffered from the oversupply of free the cement, and new community leaders, when they propose the idea of paving new rural road, and also the small dams using cement, the government provided those cement, and even the budget depending on the good performing rural community. And then later on, the government tried to permit the idea of this can-do spirit according to the 3 principles in the organizational behavior in the urban sectors, like the modern, the export companies, a lot of business firms adopted the same spirit of the cooperation and self-help. So new community rural development program has really helped Korea's modernize its rural community. In fact, at the moment, many Korean, according to KOICA, the program, we are working, providing the idea of new community movement, self-help program, some of the African countries at the moment. All right, now, it's another fascinating story. From such labor-intensive, manufacturing activity, Korean government suddenly shifted to heavy and chemical industrialization. We talked about the wig, plywood, and footwear, that. Then all of a sudden, we are talking about iron and steel and electronics, synthetic textiles, petrochemicals, shipbuilding, machinery, oil refinery. These products are totally different from, the labor-intensive export items we talked about. So I call this is truly dramatic industrial transformation. And well, here, in my own book, I cited the theory of Alexander Gerschenkron's latecomers advantage. Korea adopted the latecomers advantage in exploring this capital-intensive, heavy and chemical industries. Why we did this? Well, President Park Chung-hee figured out that maybe Korea should upgrade our export structure because other latecomers are catching up Korea very quickly in labor-intensive area. But more importantly, President Park Chung-hee realized that the self-defense is very important. After President Richard Nixon declared a troop withdrawal from the Korean peninsula, and then we observed that the North Koreans continued the provocative, the hostile the movement by the rearming their military capability. So President Park Chung-hee raised the slogan, wealthy nation and a strong army. So Korea's HCI program, in a sense, highly motivated by self-defense, the ideology. And here, in a sense, Korean government became very much firm-specific and target-specific in industrial program. And the government provided a financial support through a government administered credit allocation, and also even allowing, HCI firms to enjoy a mutual repayment guarantee from the government, as well as cross-shareholding. Those companies, actually, many Korean business leaders are very much reluctant to engage in shipbuilding, iron and steel, synthetic chemicals, because never experienced of that, and they're not confident. But President Park Chung-hee persuaded them to challenge this area. Government is ready to support them, providing the unlimited capital supply. As a result of this cross-shareholding, Korean, HCI firms were able to risk hedging by business diversification. The government, business, Hyundai, for example, or the shipbuilding, and then department store, and then, automobiles, Samsung, semiconductors, so forth. Many Korean, business firms were able to diversify their business lines to make the risk hedging. So government intentionally allowed cross-shareholding so that those big HCI firms can concentrate on the targeted sectors. But here, we should not forget that government employed picking the winner policy, provided only those good performers in terms of the achieving, technological confidence, even achieving the earning new exports, to have a government to, the subsidized credit allocations. So in a sense, this is a product of synergistic partnership between government and businesses. Indeed, this allowed a dramatic industrial transformation of South Korean economy. Well, as a result, you can see that the POSCO, iron and steel, were able to establish a global brand name. Hyundai, Samsung, Daewoo, famous shipbuilding company, the most competent in terms of the, engine saving and natural, the liquidated natural gas ships and the commercial ships, etc. And that's why the United States is so eager, President Trump is so eager to make American shipbuilding, great again, with collaboration of this South Korean shipbuilder. I hope the India and Korea can do some similar things on the shipbuilding by updating India's about 28 shipyard and building a lot of the commercial ships, as well as maybe some naval ships too. And the Samsung, LG, and the SK here now, the electronics now, the global, the champion of the memory area, semiconductors, and automobiles. Okay, and I mentioned that the great contribution of these HCI industries, but we also suffer the side effect of heavy and chemical industrialization because it pushed, in a sense, so prematurely. Okay, we are not ready in terms of the capital, in terms of technology, and so as a result, given the government, credit allocation, many HCI firms, volunteered to do this and that. As a result, we suffered the excessive overlapping investment, iron and steel area, machinery area, And then, this happened during the first oil shock, 1972, and second oil shock, 1979. They are totally capital-intensive industry, but the oil shock aggravated the balance of payment positions of country, as well as profitability of the HCI industry. And also, the credit allocation to promote HCI resulted in very shallow financial development because, bankers just followed government instructions. That's the heavy price, we had to pay for the promoting HCI, industrialization. And then clustering those HCI firms along the coastal lines in South Korea, Ulsan, Pohang, and Geoje, etc. So clustering is made it very easy. Labor unions organized, very much militant, the labor movement later on. And also further the aggravated sort of the social conflict from the inevitable linkage between politics and the economy, in a sense, under prolonged Park Chung-hee regime. That's the price we had to pay to shorten up our heavy and chemical industrialization. Well, I think in a historical perspective, under this government heavy-handed intervention, we still maintain the basic principle, picking the winner policy, okay, while the enforcing or allowing free exit liquidation of the troubled firms, which couldn't perform and which could not keep up with technological innovations. The result is very clear. In 1994, only 5 of top 10 jables of 1967 were in existence. The rest are all liquidated from the market. And then the oil shock I mentioned that provided a serious challenges, not only for Korea, but the Korean big business. And here, Korean big business responded really aggressive manner rather than yielding external pressure given by oil shocks. The Korean Jebel owners turned around, hey, look, let's respond with a very bold, research and development and adopting more advanced, technology, also nurturing the high quality human capital. Okay, I mean it's really in a sense a dramatic, turnaround by Korean big business people. And as a result, the 15 Korean companies were listed into Fortune 500. And, in a historical perspective, rising of Korea's corporate brand as given Samsung, Hyundai, POSCO, SK is very exceptional, in the industrial developed history of developing countries. It's a very, very rare case. It happened within a matter of a quarter century. So success, to today's global market, would not be possible without the HCI transformation of the early 1970s, which, enabled Korea to grow over the given period of about 8%, plus period, as Chairman Singh, indicated. Well, now we addressing, the issue in the way the growth policy in the 21st century, and now we enter a totally different, ball game. Okay. And perhaps that's the topic, we may address, next round. what the Korea want to say on the WTO, basic principles, and at the moment, okay, how we respond, Donald Trump, the protectionist and unpredictable, the policies. So we need to go through regulatory reform for business-friendly environment. Well, this is the topic, we might address it next round. Okay. Key message from Korea's development experience over the golden era, as I termed over 1962 through 1989. I think the first lesson, human capital is the most critical factor in explaining sustainable, and not just growth model. Nobel laureate, the Professor Robert Lucas clearly, analyzed, compared South Korean performance vis-a-vis, Philippine development strategy. And, this has also enormous implications. I know that India had gone through a long period of inward-looking import substitution model, but South Korea, as early as 1960, we adopted the outward-looking development strategy. This, I think, they proved to be more effective than inward-looking. Maybe inward-looking, big, large economy with huge population, it makes sense. But, my view is that outward-looking allows us, competitive environment, costless access to most advanced business practices of major firms, in the world. And then, Korean case clearly indicated institutional coherence and political commitment matter more than the regime type. In case of this, Park Chung-hee leadership and the first President Seungman Lee's, the compulsory education and the land reform, clearly point out this Korean lessons. Now I mentioned that Korea should search for innovative growth model in the age of the AI revolution. So final conclusion is that economic development is neither automatic nor painless. It is entirely non-linear process. Korea has gone through ups and downs and continuously, facing the challenges and then trying to, respond with figures from the policymakers as well as, Koreans and business people, and more importantly, Korean, public sentiment. Okay, I mean, we are so, in a sense, indoctrinated. Hey, let's escape from poverty. Okay, let us live well. Okay, let's become an advanced nation. It has sort of the common message throughout the entire Korean people, and the Korean parents ready to sacrifice their current living to ensure that their children go to the best school in the country. So the zeal for education played another critical role. Okay, let me stop. I provided some, you see, the references to support my argument here. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Han. Really very enlightening remarks on the stages of development and very good takeaways. Importance to foreign borrowing rather than FDI, export-based economy, of course, learning by doing, very important, picking the winner, again a very important concept, and the national mobilization by can-do spirit and wealthy nation, strong army. We also have a mobilizing slogan now of Viksit Bharat by 2047, for which Professor Charan Singh and EGROW Foundation are totally committed. Now, Dr. Jitendra, kindly 10 to 15 minutes, please. Unmute yourself, Professor Uttam.
Yes, sorry, some disturbance in the office. First of all, I welcome Professor An, and listening to him, it was a great pleasure. And also to Charan Singh ji, who invited me here, and I had a brief conversation with him, and it was very inspiring that if Korea can do, why we cannot do. And I have lived in Korea for a decade. During that time, I did my PhD from Seoul National University, and that period was from 1993 to 2002, and also worked under the Chaebol for 2 years and a half. I think my understanding, and I think the lecture that Professor An gave is very important, and I want to dissect it into two parts. One is that he talked briefly about the vicious cycle that Korea was in the 1950s after the independence, and then how Korea moved to the virtuous cycle. So the vicious cycle that Korea was in was low productivity, low income, low savings, and low investment. And then Korea moved to the virtuous cycle where mass production, mass employment, mass consumption through exports, though, and mass prosperity. So, how Korea moved from the vicious cycle to the virtuous cycle? And I think India has to understand that moving from this, actually, Korea worked very hard. And as one Russian economist, but ultimately professor at the Harvard University, Justin Khan, he talked about the advantage of being backward. So Korea was able to understand what were the advantages Korea had, and Korea made the economic policy according to that. And Korea had advantage that Korea had cheap labor, no resource. So Korea moved to labor-intensive mass manufacturing, and that thing worked good for Korea. And Korea in the 1960s and 70s, at least in the 60s, Korea had labor-intensive mass manufacturing, and Korea was able to employ everybody. It became a full employment economy, and that was a game changer. Then, as Professor told, that Korea moved to the what we call HCI, heavy and chemical industries. But we have to understand that when Korea moves to heavy and chemical industries, Korea was able to utilize the advantage that Korea had of the cheap labor and employed everybody. So this created a momentum in Korea, and when everybody had employment, the situation was very different. Problem that we face in India is unemployment, and it is very difficult to resolve this issue because the international situation then, when Korea was developing, was different, and now the international system and the situation is very different. So when I was doing my coursework, I studied at Seoul National University. So there was Professor Yong. He told that India can never become Korea. India can only, and at best, can become Brazil. And when he told, I was very upset because I was a student from India, and he told that India can never become Korea. So I pondered about this, what he made the comment, and I understood that actually he was not wrong, because Korea in the 1950s was able to create the level playing field through land reform during the wartime and the education reform that Lee Seung-man introduced. So Korea created socio-economic equity. And on the basis of that, the capitalism that rose in Korea was or has been much more stable than the capitalism in many other countries in Southeast Asia. I have written a full book on the varieties of capitalism in Asia, covering 9 countries. So, what Korea created, what Korean advantage, Korea worked very hard for that and created it. Korea, 1 second. The advantage Korea, what we can say, what I observed there, one, that the determination to develop. And I think nationalism was playing the part in that. And then Korea created a level playing field and also a strategic industrial policy. Korea had export orientation, but Korea was able to move from one era of industries to the other era of industries, and accordingly the incentive systems changed. And also, when Korea developed rapidly, the rural area lagged behind. So as Professor An mentioned, Korea under President Park Chung-hee launched Semaul Undong, New Village Community Movement. And like as he mentioned, he gave free cement and all this. So the rural area that was lagging behind was able to bridge the gap to some extent. And the other thing that sometimes very commonly people they talk about Korea, that Korean miracle, Korea developed because Korea was with the capitalist bloc, but picking the winners and the embedded is punishing the losers. And I think this was done, the basis was Korean firms' performance in the export market. If they don't perform, they will be punished. There were many industrial groups, they were demolished. Kukche group was there, it was demolished. So picking the winners came with the cost, and Korea was able to pay. However, the state business cooperation had a dark side, and Korea witnessed in the 1997 financial crisis. The good part of the Korean continuous miracle is that Korea was able to take the lesson and restructured its economy. When Korea was in the crisis, they launched BK21, Brain Korea 21. It was a big project, and they pushed very ruthlessly to fund and to incentivize research labs. So it was basically pushing Korea's research and development, R&D from the government side, but the business side R&D was there. But that R&D from the business was in the what they call in the one industrial area. But if you want to move from one industrial area to the another, you need massive investment. And there the government of Korea came. So I think personally what I see that Korea had initiated in the 1950s development process that it was able to, maybe the historical condition, maybe many things contributed that Korea was able to create level playing field. And thus all people in Korea, they contributed. The problem in India, what I can see, that there is a section of society that is too far from the development. How to incorporate everybody, how to create people-centric development. India's biggest advantage is that we are 1.5 billion people. And this is the power of India. Till India will not utilize this power, I think there will be problem in emulating Korea. Korea was able to realize the power of its people. And I think that lesson India has to learn, not only from Korea, from Japan, even from China, from East Asia. So I think these are my few points that I wanted to make. Korea, the story of the Korean development and learning from that, I have given a book. It is in the press, that catching up in the periphery, why India lags behind Korea, the full book. And because of that, I went to Korea, stayed there. The full book will be coming in a couple of months to talk in detail what happened between when Korea started to catch up with the West and India started to catch up the West. What happened there, how we lagged behind, that full explanation I will provide in that book. So I'm very thankful to Charan Singh ji, that you have organized such a wonderful session, because India has been always looking to West. Looking East always has been talked about but never implemented. So many people from India, they go to the West. When I was going to Korea in the 1993 in the Jawaharlal Nehru University, so people, they were laughing. They were telling Korea ji, hello Korea ji. No one thought that the East can do something, but Korea did. And I think what, sir, you have told, what Korea has done, India can do even much better. We are a bigger country. We can solve our poverty problem, underdevelopment problem, and we can rise above. And somebody was asking the question, what Nixon did to Korea. When Nixon visited China, Korea was shocked, and Korea initiated under Park Chung-hee self-help program. And the heavy and chemical industries push came. Now the Trump was shock it has given to India. India has to respond into kinds, and I think India has to move into the areas that it can employ its people. It has to involve all people in India to, to create a miracle, because Korea's miracle, Han River miracle, was something different. Time was different. But now, if we want to create the miracle, we have to construct the model that suits to India, and it has to be done only and only by the Indian people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Uttam. Yes, you are absolutely right. For India's development journey, we have to look east, and particularly at Korea, rather than to the west. We now move to question and answers. Dr. Charanji, would you like to go first?
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I want to thank Professor Ann and Professor Jitendra. It's been a fascinating talk. And no book would have given us what Professor Ann has given us in about 40 minutes. It would have been very difficult to connect the dots. And the way you conducted the journey, how it started. And Professor Jitendra, you have added that even before 62, they were already preparing the ground and tilling the soil. And then they were ready to do 1962. So I think today we have had this beautiful journey of Korea in front of us. Now, I'm so happy that we have learned that development is neither free nor easy. You need to have strategy, you need to be ready to take pain, and you will have to be learning, correcting mid-course if need be. The way he has mentioned, while you're looking at land reforms and things related to all those land issues, but suddenly you had to think of heavy industry and modern industry and tweak on the way. And that's how you were so agile and you could achieve it. So thank you very much. My question is more to you, Professor Ann. Given your vast experience, And let me share my fear with you. Given your vast experience, we in India face a constant barrage of arguments that in the current milieu of things, very difficult to go beyond 6 to 7%. Now you mentioned it, Ambassador highlighted it. You took quite a bit of shelter on exports. And China had yet not entered the export market when you were in the export market. Today, China manipulating everything that it can, fair enough. Before that, the Brits have done it, and after that, many others have done it, so fair enough. But in the export market, where there is already a glut, if India wants to go to Africa with its export basket, China is already there in a bigger way. If it wants to go to Latin America, in a bigger way. Given your vast experience, will it be possible to think of a development model which is not export oriented? Thank you.
Professor Ann, kindly go ahead. Answer, please. Professor Ann, would you like to reply to the question?
Yeah, can I reply?
Kindly, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, in a sense, I have a really great puzzle on the Indian economy. Oh, by the way, thank you very much, the Professor Jitendra, your observation and your comments. And let me go back the questions on the Indian economy. India will become the third largest economy, by 2030, even before 2030. And India has massive, labor force. I mean, your total population is the largest in the world, 1.4 billion. And your agriculture, rural sector, I think in terms of employment share, I think still more than 20%. So your great asset is on the huge, the labor force you have. If they are, skill trained, and if you improve the literacy rate, they would become a great human capital formation. That's the very asset, India can rely on. As South Korea, we did, massive unemployment and disguised unemployment, by the subsistence income, low wage, we utilize them. I think similar logic could be applied for the Indian case. Another puzzle is that if you look at development history, most of the countries, big economies, they must show a share of manufacturing sector at least above 25%. Okay, if you look at the Sirikin Moshe's analysis on a normal country, especially the 1.4 billion population, the manufacturing sector is what the share is about still 17%. So I think this Prime Minister Modi's policy slogan, "Resilient India, Make in India," is just perfectly timing, to fill up the manufacturing sector. In fact, I often pick up the blue jeans and my clothing at the department store. And these days used to be, the made in China label, but these days I look, oh, this is made in Bangladesh. And then I thought, when, I can see some blue jeans and the shirts made in India. Okay. But about a week ago, I was so glad that I picked up the belt here, the Daiso, shopping store. Look at that. made in India, you know. So I think this manufacturing share is so critical for the India's development. That means that it's your massive semi-employed rural population must be trained in terms of skill and learning new knowledge. That's the greatest the asset you can enjoy. Well, you have the best brain in the world, best the business managers, high tech, all the Indian origins, you sent for the first time the moon expedition vehicle on the other side of the moon. So in terms of the highest brain and the scientific knowledge, the most advanced. But at the manufacturing level, needs to be more trickle down, and the elevation of the skill intensity of the India's mass the labor force is, I think, the most critical component. I noted that the wage level of the Indian employees is one of those electronic company, in the India, Delhi's facility, still about the 30% of the Chinese, workers. So your asset is right there, and they is trained with more skill and intensity and high learning. I think India's the source of the enormous, productivity growth, economic growth would come from right there. So in this sense, I really would like to see that the scale down, trickle down the manufacturing base in Indian economy, and undertaking the massive skill training for the workers. And I'm very much the optimistic about India's growth prospect if you do that. And I think this Make in India policy, and also you invented now production linked to the incentive systems, and a lot of this innovative the programs. Well, I think let me, tell you this. I think as Professor Jitendra mentioned that in case of the Korea, maybe no resources proved to be a blessing because we didn't have any, no significant resource, no oils, no, significant mineral deposit. We have to produce something, okay, very starting labor-intensive product to earn the foreign exchange. So actually, necessity actually, allowed us some sort of the innovative effort. So I think this we received a lot of the foreign aid and foreign assistance, and now we believe that we should share our knowledge. Okay, we need to pay back what we owed during our development history. As a result, Korea became the first country shifting from ODA recipient countries, now the ODA providing, effective what the 3 years ago by the UNCTAD, the publications. So in this regard, I think we really would like to say that the continuing the collaboration between India and Korea. So today, actually, I mentioned that if despite CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between India and Korea, if you look at the trade volume, even the investment volume between India and Korea, still less than 10% of trade volume between Korea and China. And the trade volume between India and Korea still about only 30% of the Korea, Vietnam is the trade volumes. So we see, given the great GDP potential and huge scale economies of Indian economy, I think we have a great potential to expand bilateral linkages. And so for that matter, I think we need to expeditiously upgrade our SEPA agreement. And I thought this is one of the way to trigger this is sort of the quantum elevation of economic connectivity between Korea and India would be maybe two countries might involve some, seriously in the collaboration in defense technology. We created a very success story in K9, Farjar, is it the howitzer, the delivery. And today I suggested that well, from here we can move on, a lot of the other areas, even starting from commercial shipbuilding, which you will definitely need very badly, given huge Indian Ocean. And if India start to manufacture, a lot of the goods for the tradable trade purpose, therefore from shipbuilding, commercial shipbuilding, even the, naval shipbuilding, and also space technology, drone technology, it's endless area. I know that India has a long defense industrial collaboration with France and the Israel. It requires a long, trust building process. If India and Korea, utilizing the success story of the K9, the howitzer, and we can really build up mutual trust. And then, Korea should increase our outbound foreign direct investment in India further, which will entail the, increase of the high-tech product, so forth. So I really look forward to see the enhancing economic linkage between India and Korea. I believe that India is the most preferred destination for South Korea post-China. And, we need to diversify, given the geo-economic fragmentation caused by this, Trump, the protectionism, and or the given the G2 rivalry, China and the U.S. So I think Korea should search for a powerful and robust economic partnership, and with the shared value of democracy and the human rights. Okay? So in this context, I think this India is, as far as I'm concerned, the number one, the trading partner and economic partner in the years to come to Korea.
Any follow-up question, Dr. Charan Singh?
Yes, I'm really very lengthy answer, but very, very fruitful and very, very productive, and opportunities to go further. Now, my question was, Professor Ann, you know what happened to Japan when Japan was trying to grow, and the Americans and the Europeans didn't allow it. Did Korea face any such challenges, sort of roadblocks, which sometimes I feel in India we're beginning to feel that? Did Korea face any roadblocks on their way to becoming developed? And if so, how did they tackle them?
Yeah, I should answer. Who will be answer?
Professor An may go first.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you elaborate the question maybe in through chat box?
Yeah,
I
I can narrate the question again. You know that in Japan, when Japan was on the growth path and rapid growth path, the Louvre Accord and the Plaza Accord played an important role in slowing the growth of Japan. Like these countries were not willing it to give the way so easily. And there were roadblocks planted on the way. While Korea was growing at that rapid rate and for such a long time, did it face challenges from the existing developed countries not to catch up that fast?
Well, you mean you're talking about this Korea's future growth path, huh?
Yeah, and even what they did between 62 and 89, and even after that. I understand that there were challenges when Korea's currency was in deep trouble in 2008,
Mhm.
and and there were lots of reluctance to bail it out.
Well, I think this maybe that's the topic we might address in another round of this webinar. I think at the moment, Korean government declared that Korea would become the third AI power and also fourth arms exporter. Uh, you know, uh, in the years to come. And to do that, we have enormous, really challenging task. How we deal with the labor issues. Okay, I mean, Korean labor unions keep demanding higher wages, something, outstripping the labor productivity. That's the issue we need to resolve. And also we suffer from the shortage of the AI power because of declining population. We having now the lowest fertility rate among the OECD economies, and so also expected the shortage of the electric power to create such a huge database, which will allow the as a third power of the AI technology. And also, we see that the political ideological difference among between the Progressive Party and also, what I call the Conservative Party. It is indeed a very challenging task how the Korean, the policymakers to consolidate and calling for the national, the emotional unity to give for the 20th century. So this is another sort of the critical path we need to go through. But I believe that after having, such great challenge during HCI period and then going through the Asian financial crisis and undergoing the massive restructuring process, and then being squeezed between China and the U.S. rivalry. So we need to search for, how we can, escape, navigate from this, in the middle of the conflicting interest between two big powers, as in the sort of my own anecdote story. Um, I mentioned the use sort of Korea should possess what we call the hedgehog technology, okay? And the hedgehog, nobody can, swallow it, no matter how big, our neighbors are. Once Korea developed such hedgehog technology, like the memory chip of semiconductor, and now Samsung and SK continue to upgrade, maybe below 2 nano level, and the entry barrier of the semiconductor manufacturing is just enormous, requiring huge early investment and also waiting for long maturity period. So, but China challenges, of course, other countries to that. So, and Korea, I think that we should cultivate the semiconductor level, even in manufacturing the AI semiconductor, so that we can, escape from the next the follows. I think that's the only survival strategy, we can navigate this one, even against the North Korean challenge.
Right.
Professor Uttam, would you like to make some remarks before we close the session?
Yeah, actually, I would like to add something to what Charan Singh ji has asked about the roadblocks. I think in the 60s, end of like late 60s, when Korea was thinking to build Pohang Steel Corporation, a big steel mill, actually US never permitted it. So that was one roadblock. And then actually Korea during the Cold War time promoted domestic industrial capital at the expense of the international capital. So the Korean corporations, Daewoo, Samsung, Hyundai, all they were mostly owned by the Koreans, and there was not much participation of the international capital. So the the intervention from the West came in the form of 1997 crisis. And after the crisis, if we see the data, actually around 30 to 40% of the Korean big corporations now they are owned by the overseas capital. So that readjustment Korea had to make, and this was also a roadblock from the developed countries for Korea. So I think Korea has learned in many ways. Even Park Chung-hee, when Nixon visited, actually Korea was surprised that how come America is visiting a country that participated in the Korean War. So Korea wanted to adjust with this, and it was in the self-help mode, and the HCI program came. It was not the willingness of the US when the HCI program came. And even Korea, when the crisis came, Korea brought BK21, Brain Korea 21 project. I think that was also the Korean understanding how to go about, how to understand the crisis. And Japan was not actually able to recover easily after the this bubble burst, but Korea was able to do it. However, the cost Korea paid by allowing the foreign firms to own part of the Korean corporations. So I think Korea has been able to move despite some kind of resentment, some kind of constraint erected by the West. Yeah, that's it.
And was it the strategy to work silently without even getting noticed under the carpet? And then you become the hedgehog, nobody can swallow you? Was that also part of the strategy?
Could you write the question, in the chat box so that I cannot, I have some problem in hearing your questions. I think Professor Jit, you mentioned that the future of the Korean big business firm, I mean, including the Pohang steel mill, is that your question? What's the main challenge they face?
Professor Uttam's was a comment, not really a question, Professor Ann.
Yeah, it was a comment.
It
It
was a
was
comment.
adding to the first question.
So Dr. Charan Singh is posting a question which is now on your screen. Please see the chat box, Professor Ann. The question is there from Dr. Charan Singh.
Okay. Well, I think I understand this. Korea is growing, quickly without the noticed that the question.
Yeah.
Yes, between 62 and 89. Was Korea
Well,
trying to grow silently without getting noticed?
well, I think I don't know, how we can manage it. I mean, what's happening to Samsung or LG Hyundai is reporting almost everyday financial news, Financial Times and New York Times everywhere, right? Especially the Korea's engagement, very heavy volume in the United States. So Korean economic the performance is visible, everywhere. But I think that the question I understand is that how Korea nurture its, technological capability, internally. I think that's really a fundamental challenge. At the moment, you see, China actually has taken over almost every field of the Korea's industrial, the pioneering sectors, iron and steel, even shipbuilding and electronics and premium, the household electric, the appliances, all now they captured, caught by the China. China has enormous the oversupply capacity in this area with the heavy government subsidy. So, Korea faces at the moment the dual challenge. One from this, Trump's the high tariff policy, unpredictable. And the second challenge is how we overcome the overcapacity and even their dumping practices. Okay, the Korea's export, commodity. That is real serious one. Unless we, overcome this, Korean economy will run into what I call this, lower high income, syndrome trouble or something like that. Never surpassing per capita income level for $40,000 or dollars, something like that.
Shall we conclude now, Dr. Choong Singh?
Sure, we can.
So thank you very much, Prof. and Dr. Jitendra and EGROW. See, really, what one sees with one's own experience, and all of us, our webinar participants, and they were also noticing in the chat box, perhaps we have the policies, but the implementation has been poor. So on the implementation part, there is much we can learn from Korea. I always felt that in Korea, it was very outcome oriented, whether picking up winners, whether as a corporate or as a executive. The winners were chosen. In India, it is procedure oriented. That audit should be good, the company may go into loss. I think there is a fundamental dichotomy there. And then also some lack of leadership. I think in Korean chaebols, there was very strong leadership who were risk takers, who were backed by the government, and they delivered. In India, with a system of every 1 or 2 years, CEOs changing and our group secretaries changing, I think there is some room for improvement, because whatever missions have been in mission mode with one strong leader, whether it is space program or nuclear program or metro, it has been successful. Professor Ann mentioned POSCO. Now, Mr. Park Tae-joon really established POSCO because he had full support of President Park Chung-hee. So, picking up strong leaders to pilot and execute programs, and very fair and quick assessment of the performance of a company or an individual, perhaps that will improve the implementation on our side. So thank you very much, Professor Ann. Already, we have in films, there are sequels: Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3. And for this India-Korea dialogue under auspices of EGROW, I think already you have laid foundation for 2 more discussions. One on how to go forward, AI, etc. India also has very ambitions on AI, so we can be very, very good partners. As you said, there is some dearth of not talent, but human material, which we have. So on that very positive note, I thank all the participants. Thank Dr. Charan Singh and EGROW for organizing this
Can I
webinar.
say just
Yeah,
one
please,
thing?
please go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I really appreciated having this great opportunity to share our values as well as our strategy for economic development. One thing I really want to share with you why I became enticed looking at India and also developing the strategic collaboration between 2 countries. From my primary school days, I really admire Saint Poet Powell's the Korea will the lamp of East, East Asia. Once it illuminated, the world will become very peaceful, So that actually, induced me to look at India from my primary school days. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. Yeah.
Any concluding remarks, Dr. Chansi, you would like to make before we close?
Yes, I want to, of course, thank you for sharing this important. As you can see, I think it's very pathbreaking. It's going to be historical for us. And I'm sure many of us are going to re-listen to the whole thing and share with friends in the government. Very, very important lessons that we have learned from Professor An. And of course, Professor Jitendra Uttam has also given us insights. An Indian living in Korea, doing his PhD in Korea, back in India. I think he has important messages to share with all of us. So I think it's been a very, very fruitful discussion, especially while we are marching towards Viksit Bharat. I understand it's neither painless and nor is it easy. It's not linear. We will have to strategize, probably tweak it. And I think that's the greatest message. The last line in your slides is the greatest message we need to have. We all will have to be ready for the pain that will be required to undertake this journey. And I'm sure many roadblocks will come on our way, and fine, we are ready for that too. We in India have passed through various stages, and I think this challenge is worth taking a challenge. So I want to thank each one of you on the panel and the participants in the conference who have been asking questions in the chat box, which have been also quite motivating and in a way being answered. Next Friday, before I go to next Friday, Professor An has written a book on Indo-Korea along with his colleague, Professor Panda. Sometimes in May, because all our Friday slots are booked till May, sometimes in May, we are going to invite that book to be presented at EGROW. We'll share the time and date with you. Now, next Friday, we have another fascinating discussion by Dr. Anup Singh, who was the director of various departments in IMF. He'll be talking to us about the fiscal issues and those issues that will take us into Viksit Bharat. To chair the session, we have Mr. Amar Patnaik, who is a former civil servant and now a member of Rajya Sabha. He will chair the session next Friday. So I would like you to please spare time and come and join us for that important session on December 26th. I know most of you would be on vacations, December 25, and then a Sunday, but wherever you are, it'll be worth your time, I promise you. So please tune in for that session. That'll be very useful. The session after that is again very interesting. We have a session on Indo-Germany economic relations, a webinar on January 2, a Friday, just after the New Year. And these two sessions, December 26th and January 2, I think are going to be very, very important, not to be missed. I would request you to please pencil and plan to join us. With that, once again, let me thank our chair for the day, our main speaker and the discussant, and wishing you all a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
We bring the webinar to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you.